Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 32 of Mythos Busters, where tonight we use the word Hastur with reckless abandon, but only because we haven't gotten to the end of the Unspeakable Oath yet. With me tonight is Ian. Hi, Ian.
Hastur.
See? No consequences whatsoever. No way that'll ever come to bite us.
I think I've already got all my consequences already for this month. So.
And Scott. Hi, Scott.
Voldemort.
Ooh, damn, we're whipping out the big guns.
Yeah.
Earmuffs, kids. Earmuffs. Now, I'm afraid to escalate, but Nick?
Fuck!
There it is.
God.
Sure, that's an unspeakable word.
Low-hanging yet effective fruit.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, tonight we've got a fun episode for you guys, and yeah, we are working hard for that explicit tag. Tonight we are going to do our normal intros, news. We've got some fun stuff to talk about, and then we're going to bust right into the first couple Mythos packs of the Path to Carcosa cycle. So we're going to be talking about Echoes of the Past and the Unspeakable Oath, player cards, strategy, what have you. And then, of course, we're going to catch up on a couple voicemails, including a new spin we're putting on the Mythos Busters hotline, and rounding it out with a little bit of technical time. So, guys, Nick, what do we got going on in the community?
Community. Yeah. I have a note here. Yes. So a lot of you are probably already aware of it, but just in case, I was asked to plug this piece of community work, and I've checked it out, and I really enjoy it. But Wandering Took and Big Foam Loaf are doing a Monday LCG streaming, or they were. I believe they're still doing it. You can check that out. They do streaming on Twitch for Arkham and also for Lord of the Rings, and they occasionally have guests on. And they also post their videos to YouTube. You can just go to YouTube and search for the Wandering Took, and you will find it on there. Wandering Took. I always say Took, but I've noticed some people in the Lord of the Rings LCG community say Took. So I'm not sure, but I'm going to keep saying
Well,
Took.
if the Lord of the Rings community is going to agree on anything, it's that we should all disagree on how things are pronounced.
Yeah,
fair enough. So definitely check them out. When I was asked to plug this, they were just finishing up Dunwich, and that was a while ago because we went a couple episodes without community highlights based on the formats of the episodes. So they're probably, I would guess they're starting Carcosa now, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, check out YouTube and search for Wandering Took, and you will find it on there. Pretty cool videos.
Oh yeah, and we know Daniel, Big Foam Loaf, personally,
Yes.
So they're good dudes. Check them out.
And I know Wandering Took personally because he lives in.
Oh yeah, that's right. He's an Edmontonian.
Mm-hmm.
Edmontonite.
That means he's good.
Edmontonian.
You're from Edmonton, you're good.
Yeah.
Not,
You're good,
then you're bad.
Good people.
Ian, surely we had some news since we last recorded.
Oh, yes, we did. So we had one small bit of news and a bigger one. The small bit of news that I'll just talk about briefly is we got a new FAQ. But there wasn't anything too monumental that came out of that, even compared to the last FAQ we got. I think kind of the biggest things to take note of is just that they fix some little typos and rules issues here and there. I think the biggest ones were corrosion. Previously, it was the case because of the way that particular treachery was worded that you could actually discard other players' items to satisfy that requirement. And I remember us even doing that during our invocation event. But now that's been changed, so you only discard from your own items. So no trolling other players. And the other big one was just, since we're talking about Unspeakable Oath today, this will come up, but originally there was some weirdness with the patient confinement because they had the asylum trait and the agendas stipulated that at a certain point that you would ignore the text on asylum locations. Basically that lets you go into those locations without spending a clue, which I think a lot of us realized that wasn't the intent, but now that's clarified by those locations losing the asylum trait. So basically you have to do what the cards tell you to do, which is spend a clue to investigate those particular locations. So you can go read the FAQ and see the rest of it, which kind of clarifies some long-standing questions to a few different scenarios. The bigger news, though...
Tangential question.
Sure.
Do you guys find yourself, just in general, not even just with card games, but just in general, following the letter of the law or the spirit of the law in such situations?
Are you talking about like something like Unspeakable Oath with the jail cells? Or the...
I just mean in general, just as a person.
I do it... in general, as a person, gosh. All right, okay. According to card games, like when dealing with card games as a person in general, I tend to go in the way that, I guess the spirit is what you would say, like what I would do as a designer or what I feel is the intent. That's usually how I end up doing it.
Okay.
I think I'm more letter of the law when it comes to games.
That's where I would have pegged you.
Yeah. Like I'm like, if it says this, it says this, and that's the way it goes. That being said, sometimes like in Lord of the Rings, there's a couple of erratas I completely disagree with. Thanks, C-Stan. And I just say, screw that. I'm playing the way it was printed because it's just more fun. But
Fair enough.
It's also cooperative. So
yeah, there is that.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to be janky when there's no one's getting hurt by it.
Mm.
I think it depends. For me, a lot of times with player cards, thinking about my experience with Lord of the Rings, there's some stuff that I know according to the spirit of what was intended. It probably wasn't intended to be that broken, but I mean, I'll just play what it says until it gets errated. But cases like this with the Unspeakable Oath and the Patient Confinement, like the letter of what it says is to ignore those things, but I didn't because I knew clearly. I mean, it was just so obvious to me that clearly that was not the intent. Like that would make no sense. So I followed the spirit of the law in those cases where I can basically, when I can tell that it was a mistake or oversight of some kind, then I'm not gonna. I feel like I'm cheating myself out of what the scenario is designed to do if I'm just slavishly holding to, well, technically the rules say this, so,
yeah,
that kind of thing.
Well, true to form, Ian, you and I are basically the same person. So tangent over.
Tangent complete. So we got bigger news though than just an FAQ, and I feel like this game really has a way of surprising me because this is like the 5th or 6th time where I'm saying I did not see this coming, but really didn't. They basically announced a new kind of product for Arkham Horror the card game, which is the return to the Night of the Zealot. So they're classifying this as an upgrade expansion. It's basically taking the core Night of the Zealot campaign and revisiting it, doing a 2.0, a remix, if you will. They're adding new encounter cards, new player cards, actually, all kinds of new stuff to basically reinvigorate that campaign and allow us to play through it again. A lot of people are comparing this to Nightmare Mode in Lord of the Rings, but I can see that, but in a lot of ways this feels different to me, where it's I don't doubt that they'll probably add some stuff that's more difficult so that we can revisit it, but it doesn't feel like that's the main focus of it.
It would feel like it would be
freshening it up.
Right. I feel like it would be a huge missed opportunity if all they did was just make things harder and not like play with the narrative a bit more within obviously the big confines of the Night of the Zealot campaign, but there's some things that they could do differently and all that. And even just looking at some of the cards that have been spoiled in that article, it really leads you to believe that that's the direction they're going.
Well, I mean, even in the Gathering, like one of the cards says it refers to like your den or something. Like it refers to other locations. So I think the idea is among the community that first part where you're just stuck in your office or your study, that area is going to be bigger to start.
Oh,
and then,
sure.
Because it's something like to advance this, like speaking of the study, to advance that, you need extra clues or something. I forget. I haven't looked at the article in a while, but...
Sure. And we do know that there's a toilet ghoul, so there's that to think about too. At some point, we're going to have to deal with the horrors of our own bathroom. So
that just reminds me of this 80s movie. I want to say it was one of the Critters movies. I can't remember, but there's one that comes out of the toilet while someone is using it. So that's what I remember.
Oh god, that would have given me a
Stokes
lifelong
book is saying
phobia.
Ghoulies. It could have been Ghoulies. Ghoulies or Critters. One of those movies along those lines.
Take both a physical and a mental trauma.
Yeah, totally.
I think it would introduce rules for taking anal trauma.
Oh.
you have to put it on the back of your card.
Yeah, I need to watch Ghoulies again. So, what else about Return? Yeah, it's just surprising that they're doing this. I know there's a little bit of a debate on our Discord about is this too soon or not, but I like the idea overall. I think I think it's better than waiting like 5 years from now and start just doing a bunch of them. But
Guys, I don't want more content, okay? Could you just slow down?
I was surprised at the amount of people on Facebook who were like, no thanks. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, really? Because to me, this seems like the perfect time for something like this. You know what I mean? Like, a cycle is, like, at least to announce it, like, a cycle is just closing up. We know we're going to get another cycle, you know, relatively shortly after or whatever. It seems like this is the perfect time, 2 cycles in, to really say, okay, the content that exists already is really God, that picture, god damn it, that the content that exists already is really good, and we want to, you know, give you a reason to like revisit it. And not only that, but this is a product you could essentially just buy the core box and then buy this, and that's it, which is amazing.
That was my first thought. I was like, oh my god, this is such a cool second buy.
Yeah,
but
yeah. It also comes. The box is meant to hold the whole campaign as well, like,
right.
So there's that edition where you can be like, you know what, I've played Night of the Zealot, you know, to death, and then you play through the revised vision a few times, and then you can store it all away on your gaming shelf, and it's pretty and stuff for when you do want to bring it back out. Does
it fit both, like, the original Night of the Zealot and the new stuff?
So I think someone counted, like, the article has, like, a inventory of all the things, and I guess the number of dividers, they're like...
there's 18 dividers that listed here.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think was there 10 different encounter sets in the core set? 11? Something like that? Basically,
I'm not sure.
Someone went through, counted, and they hypothesized that yes, it will fit both.
Awesome.
So.
Yeah, and this is the first time I can remember an LCG product actually giving us some kind of storage thing with it.
Right.
At least that I can think of.
Like a useful piece of storage, like not like the box that it comes in.
Useful
A box in which cards can't even stand upright.
Yeah, ugh.
Yeah, so at this point, I'm not sure whether this is just meant for the core, or whether they're going to try to do something for subsequent campaigns. I guess, as always, it'll depend on how it's received and how it sells. But
I'd be willing to bet that this is a pilot. This is like an in-between product, because it relates to something that every player in the game has to have already bought. But it kind of proves the need, or I don't know, like it proves the market for, you know, like little mini campaigns or something, right? Like they could just release, you know, 2 campaign scenarios and we could throw all the side quests in there. Or sorry, 2 scenario campaigns, and we can lengthen them if we want and that sort of thing. But I don't know, it seems really cool.
I think this is probably also a test by like number of sales. Are they going to do Dunwich? Are they going to do Carcosa? Because I mean, I'd love to have this for every campaign, but it's also definitely a lot of work on the longer ones.
Yeah, that's true. Especially if they want to go the whole, like, we're going to release a box that can hold everything. Like, if they do that again, like, then if they do Dunwich, then that box is going to be pretty big.
I think you'd have to do, like, the first 4 scenarios of Dunwich and the second 4. It'd be 2 products. But
that could happen.
People be like, FFG's taking all my money. It's like, because you have no choice in the matter.
I don't like that they make me
buy things to have things.
You beat me to it. I don't like that I have to buy their stuff.
Yeah.
That reminds
that's ultimately what it gets down to.
That reminds me of a recent review of I think it was one of the Telltale games, and someone reviewed the second episode, giving it 1 star. Like, I don't like how I have to pay for the other episodes besides the first one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't like the episodic or freemium model, that much in video games, but it works for me in board games pretty well because, you have it in your hands.
We don't really have a freemium model in board. Like, that'd be... If they gave away a free board game and said you just have to pay for the expansions, I'd be like, sick! But, but yeah, no, it seems like people are approaching still, which is surprising, so many years after the LCG has been a thing, but they're approaching this game almost like from the mentality of, I want to buy a board game and be able to play that board game so many times and then maybe get an expansion for it. Whereas this, it's like, no, like, this is a continuing experience, and by buying, not necessarily the core, but like if you decide to go past the core, then you're kind of investing in that, you know what I mean? In that model of it being a continued experience. Let's just keep talking about the same thing that we've been talking about since Lord of the Rings released,
No doubt.
So the other way this thing is different than Nightmare model of Lord of the Rings is this one actually includes new player cards as well to build on the core set player cards. So the one example they gave us is a new and improved Rabbit's Foot. So Scott, do you have that handy to read that one?
Unfortunately, I don't. I will
just linked the article.
I got you, fam.
However,
Rabbit's Foot is a level 3 survivor asset. It has a wild icon. It has the item and charm traits. It takes up the accessory slot. And reaction: after you fail a skill test, exhaust Rabbit's Foot. Search the top X cards of your deck for a card and draw it. Shuffle the remaining cards into your deck, where X is the amount you failed by.
Very nice.
I like it a lot.
3 XP nice?
Yeah.
What you guys thinking there?
For a deck that's already using Rabbit's Foot, I think so. Like, you don't use Rabbit's Foot in every Survivor deck, do you? I don't think so.
No. Not every Survivor. No.
And the ones that use it are the ones that are kind of going with that whole fail-forward mentality, from my understanding. So I would think it'd be worth 3 experience.
If it was another class, I might be down on the 3 XP, but Survivors aren't, like, spending a ton of expensive stuff in Survivors.
They don't have a single card over 4 or 5. Or that's
right. It depends on how hard you're leaning into the exile stuff, I suppose.
I think Rabbit's Foot, it shines in hard and expert. Because you fail just so much more often. And it's just kind of a backup. It's like, well, I failed, but at least I get to draw a card. This is infinitely better.
This is kind of okay. So it's kind of comparable to Old Book of Lore, right? Because say worst case scenario, most tests, if you utterly fail them, you draw the tentacle. You're drawing somewhere between 2 and 5, or you're looking at somewhere between 2 and 5 cards from the top of your deck, right? Probably most of the time you're looking at 2 to 3. I would assume.
Yeah.
And you don't have to spend an action to do that, I suppose. It's just more conditional. And that's the difference. With the action, it costs you an action, which is really valuable, but you get to choose when you do it, whereas this is a little bit more swingy.
Now, would you say that Rabbit's Foot level 3 is so good, you'd buy Relic Hunter to get a second one? I'm just kidding. The answer's no.
I was say that's a 9 experience drop. I don't know about that, but maybe we'll see some crazy Survivor build that's literally all about fishing your deck for the. No, it's not going to happen.
Well, you've got the Cherished Keepsake now too, right? So
true.
Oh my God, Relic Hunter.
well, I'm sure it'll become useful eventually.
Yeah.
At some point we'll get some bomb accessories.
Yeah.
The fun thing about this one is you could totally just roll uphill and do an investigate test on like a 5 or 6 shroud location, just knowing that it's just going to be like a better, more efficient than just spending an action to draw a card in that case, because at least you'll have a better chance of grabbing the card you want.
I think it is really interesting that it does scale, like Scott brought up, the whole, this is a hard or expert buy for sure. We're kind of hemming and hawing a little bit about standard because that's generally what we play, but on hard, I would definitely drop the 3 experience for this.
So I think that was about it for this box, other than, I guess they're including some achievements that you can try to strive for if that's your particular thing you like doing. I think one of the examples was, where is it? The pinch hitter achievement, which is basically defeating 3 ghouls without the baseball bat breaking. So just a little thing they throw in there to give some more replay value.
Seems good. Is that the end of the news?
That's about it, yeah.
Oh,
We're just, still waiting for the next cycle to be announced, which, given when those announcements usually happen, I expect that to happen sometime soon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I assume that the Return of the Night Zelt's coming out in between the 2 cycles, so we'll get the last pack. The next month we'll get Return. The next month we'll get the next cycle, hopefully.
Optimistic, but feasible.
Yeah. I would say, how many months was there between the core set and Dunwich?
Too many.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they tossed us the bone with Carnival in between there to kind of break up that shatter pause of content. But, whatever. I play Lord of the Rings. I am used to long delays at this point. This ain't nothing. All right, so I think then, Scott, do you have any rules PSAs to lay on us this time? You're going to crack an egg of knowledge?
I do. However, I think I'm going to move this segment to near the end of our Unspeakable Oath discussion, because it's about the ending to Unspeakable Oath.
Aha.
So, one little rule thing I'll throw in the FAQ that I found very interesting is it's clearly lined out now. Players cannot control other players' signature cards. Like, you can't trade them. Ever. Just straight up, you cannot control them. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I can see from a development standpoint why they'd want that to be a thing. But you know what? Right. I can see, if Ashcan dies, Duke would, move it on to the next dude, right? Thematically.
Maybe, yeah.
Or is Duke like what's the dog's name from Futurama?
That's exactly what I was thinking. That's exactly where my mind went.
Don't mention Seymour to me, I will.
That show is so good! Oh yeah, Duke's just hanging out by the street corner.
Stop.
He is definitely that dog.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
God, that episode kills me every time.
But of course Ashcan dies first. Of course he does. Anyway.
So anyways, I think it's totally like you said. It's something Matt put in there just to be like, okay, I don't have to think about this every time I design a card now. Just because I'm sure one day down the road, if he didn't put this in, there'd be some broken combo. Yeah.
Teamwork lets you trade allies, right?
Yes.
Trade away so maybe this is to prevent trading away Baron Samedi.
Yeah.
Wait, would that even make a difference? Yeah, that would, because it's at the location. Yeah, isn't he?
But do you control him? You don't, because he's technically in a counter card.
Oh, he just takes the slot. He doesn't have the ally trait. That's right. Never mind then.
All right, we're way farther down this hypothetical rules rabbit hole than I'm comfortable being. All right, so then I suppose that's as good a segue as any to bust on into our discussion of Echoes of the Past and Unspeakable Oath. So, let's start with Echoes of the Past. So, fresh off of the charming party at the Domain residence, we are off to the Arkham Historical Society. So, setting up, I think the big notable one about this is kind of the cool configuration of the map. How did you guys feel about that stacked floor thing that it had going on?
Love it.
Yeah, it felt like a 3-story building.
Felt like setting up a Donkey Kong level or something.
That would be really cool if you could wrap from the right location over to the left one. I suppose some of them.
Some cases you can, depending on how the passageways show up. Yeah, it feels like Pac-Man then. As someone who has thought about designing a scenario that's centered around a multi-story building, this is definitely a much more. I never thought about just doing what do you call it? Not a cross section, but just slicing it and doing 2-dimensional looking straight on. I was always okay,
that's a cross section.
Okay, well there you go, a cross section. Yeah, I guess I'm smarter than I thought, but yeah, no, it's just it was so clean and so obvious that awesome job with it.
Yeah, and all right, so then I think the other notable thing is kind of related to the core mechanic that this scenario's got going on, where the cultists are actually kind of counter-investigating, I suppose. They're gathering anti-clues in the form of Doom. So you get to throw a cultist or 3 out there depending on how many players you have. So I suppose just kind of general play tips. How do you guys kind of walk through the flow of this scenario? Do you kind of start on the ground level and just work your way up? Do you beeline for that cultist to get the doom off the board? How do you guys normally roll this one?
I think it varies. Like if you're going to play solo, my first game, like my face check was solo with Daisy, and I found it really easy because I just basically like I got in, I'd flip over a location, I'd clear it of clues. So at no time was there ever a cultist that spawned and there were clues at those locations. So I could put them wherever I wanted. So I took it one room at a time, slowly moving up the building. The other thing I did, I was like, well, I have these 3 clues. I could advance, but I've got a plan in my hand. I'm just going to go and collect all the clues. And so I advanced the agenda in like one turn. I just went like, okay, advance, okay, advance, okay, advance. And then I got the guy. I was like, oh, so I just go to the library, investigate, and then I win.
So what you're saying is Daisy's really good in a library.
Apparently.
This is one of those few scenarios, and it might be even the only one that I can think of, that actually feels easier playing true solo.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like when I played it like 3 times true solo. I played it once with 4-player, and I played it once, me and my wife, 2-player. And true solo, I breezed through it. Like it feels like an intermission. And whereas with at least one other player, that's when it's like, okay, suddenly like you have to shift your focus, and suddenly you have to deal more with cultists and stuff like that. So,
that's so funny. Like I just now realized I've never actually played this in true solo.
I think the big thing is that you don't start with a cultist in play in true solo.
And that definitely has an effect on the pace.
Huge effect, yeah.
Because my thought when I asked the question was, oh yeah, I have one investigator who just plays cultist duty, cultist bashing duty. That is your job. You go kill cultists. Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing that plays into that is a lot of times encounter decks in Arkham aren't necessarily designed to like really be dependent on a bunch of encounter cards comboing with each other. Right. Like they can, but they don't necessarily revolve around that. But Echoes of the Past is an exception because the encounter deck really needs to combine with each other. Mm-hmm. Like putting Doom on cultists and then spawning a cultist at the same time. Really chaining these effects together, and of course that doesn't happen in solo, so you don't feel that same pressure. That whole dynamic of like the cultist counter investigating doesn't really come through as much in solo, whereas in higher player counts, then the encounter deck can at least kind of string those combos together.
Mm-hmm. Right, you can draw those encounter cards that add the doom, and then the one that shifts it all to the agenda suddenly.
Right.
And which I kept thinking, like, every time I play it solo, I keep thinking that's on the agenda that says that you move them from the cultist. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, no, it's an encounter card. Well, then I'll just let them sit there. Like, let them just collect the clues, who cares, Mm-hmm. I got the ones I need. It's bizarre how weird that shifts. I
think the key is, I found, like, obviously solo is a completely different beast. In the games I play with 2, 3, and 4 players, I don't know if I played with 2, 3, and 4. Anyways, I found a slow, methodical pace where you're managing the clues on locations. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't want every location flipped within 2 turns the game starting. You want to have like one location with a bunch of clues out, with your cultist killer right beside that location, so that when the guys spawn with like the most clues or whatever, they can go there, they get killed, and then the other 2 are like you flip a location and you just get all those clues as quick as you can.
That's so funny that it's not in the pack we're talking about, but that's like a perfect example of when the card Ambush would be a good card.
Yeah. I was thinking
except they have to go to empty locations, don't they? Never mind.
Would Ambush being there prevent it from being an empty location?
Yeah, when there's no investigator at Ambush's location, you have to discard it.
Oh.
Because there's no one there to ambush them.
That's true. I was thinking it was like a trap. I don't know.
Because instead of get them, it's go into the other room.
Yeah.
I think you're thinking of Snare, is it?
No. Possibly. Yeah, I'm thinking of a Survivor card, yeah.
Yeah, or I forget what it's called. It seems like a Lord of the Rings card, but yeah.
Anyway, that's a non-bow. So slow and methodical seems pretty okay. Do you guys have you ever found, I think I've had of the 5 or 6 times I've played through this for campaigns, I think I've had one where just we started with one in play. Of course, it's on the 3rd floor. It takes forever to get there. Like, we had one come out during the first Mythos phase, and then a mysterious chanting came out right after that. Like, I find anything with cultists can get so swingy with the Doom. Have you guys found that to be the case here? Like, maybe not quite as bad as we would say for like Essex County Express, but I did still find this one, like, if you pull the wrong cards in the wrong order, like Ian's point, they're meant to combo with each other, so it can get pretty bad pretty fast.
Yeah, choo motherfucker.
Well, that's how the cultists, like, that's from the cultist set in the core,
like, that's
in the
what
core
they're
box.
There to
that's
do.
That's what they do. Yeah, is they literally advance the game faster than it should. And the difference between, like, a game like this or a scenario like this versus Essex is Essex, your movement is limited. And not only is your movement limited, but it's limited, but you also need to try and go as fast as possible. So then adding that layer of fast Doom as well just kind of creates this perfect storm of, nope, you're not doing this scenario. Whereas in this one, like, the whole map is open to you right away, and granted the cultists spawn all over the place, but they're going to be getting clues at different rates as well, so you can kind of prioritize one versus the other. And you can you have more freedom, I guess, is kind of what I'm getting at. So it can be swingy, but I don't feel like this one is nearly as swingy as Essex is.
Yeah, I definitely felt like I had way more control over the swinginess in this one. For exactly what you said, Nick. Like, elusive is a card in this one, whereas on the train, it's like I can't elusive forward, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
All right. So, God, I'm just trying to think what. So, I suppose kind of looking toward the end game of this one, Act 3 or Agenda 3, whichever happens to hit you first. Do you guys find to go out by investigating the hidden library more often, or by taking the possessed oath speaker on more often?
Library all times but one?
It's been all library for me.
Yeah, me too.
The Oath Speaker has only hit the table during one game for me, but even in that game, I still did the library.
Well, and even when he does, like, he's a formidable friggin' foe.
Yes.
He's basically like a ghoul priest that readies every turn.
Yeah,
you got to be fast if you want to take him down.
I think this scenario is just, it's basically an easier scenario, and so a lot of times you can just cruise through and get the library, and I did have the Oath Speaker come out once, but it's still, I was able to get out before he could move there. I want to do one. I almost want to do one play where I just intentionally just wait for the Oath Speaker and fight him, just so I can play around with the Tattered Cloak, like just be like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator and just waiting for him to come.
In one of my current hard campaign with Spoon and BD Flory, I was Rex, and I moved to the library, got all the clues, but did not advance, and just let them kill the Oath Speaker. So we got both the VPs for the library, and that's the only time we got the Tattered Cloak. And we gave it to Mark, because he'll be able to, like, when you have 3 or less sanity remaining, it's like, so he takes 1 sanity and he gets the bonus, so...
Yeah. That's so funny, Scott, because I basically had the same thing. My Zoe and Norman campaign, that's my Slightning Gun campaign. Mm-hmm. So...
The only campaign that matters. Yep, got it.
Pretty much. I look very fondly to getting back to that one right now. I have my Mark and Lola campaign on the table. But so basically the same thing happened. Is we were on top of things. Norman was doing his thing with his Rites of Seeking and his normal cluveriness. Mm-hmm. And Zoe was just camped out in the entryway, just waiting for that Oath Speaker to show up. Slightning gunned him into the next dimension. Okay, cool. So then talking about, I suppose, resolutions, there's not, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference here. There's obviously the difference between the library and getting the choice with the Onyx clasp versus the Tattered Cloak. Do you guys take the clasp? Are you role-playing this one? This is one I'm role-playing all the time. Like, who takes it? Who doesn't?
Yeah, definite role-playing. But it was one of those things that I really liked that threw me for a loop the first time that I chose to keep it. And because I was used to last cycle where the thing you keep, the Necronomicon, is like an asset. It helps you, and you have the thought like, oh, how is it going to hurt me in the future? And this is the reverse. Like, oh, I'm going to take it. Wait, it's a weakness. It's going to hurt me, so that must mean it's going to help me somehow in the future. So it's kind of an interesting twist.
I totally roleplayed it with Daisy, and my face checked Daisy. Because she burned down the house, I consider her just this like scatterbrained, like almost, I want to say, like, she's so anxious she looks like a tweaker. Like, she's like, burn down the house. Oh my god, it's a class. She's like, I'm not touching that. Like, runs out. So,
and yet she keeps the Necronomicon in her book bag.
Yeah, well,
that she's one. Cool with. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So the Onyx Clasp, that's... Well, we'll get there. Okay, so I blew past it at the beginning. I meant to talk about player cards first. So let's talk about any notable player cards in this pack. So this is notably the pack that gave us the Composure assets and the Desperate Skills. So we got some pretty intense themes all in one pack. So anything you guys would call attention to?
Has any of us used the Composure ones to great effect? I have not.
I also have not.
To great effect?
I wouldn't say great effect.
Okay, have you? Because I put one in a roll-in deck for a 4-player game we were doing, and the guy who played it got it out, but it never all it did was soak horror, which happened like the next turn, and it soaked 1, you know. So I was kind of like, is it worth the card space when there's so many, especially in Guardian, there's so many other assets that are good. So I'm still on the fence about them as a whole, but I can definitely see where they fit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So like comparing them to the skill boosters, we need to come up with like an accepted term for what those things are called. But anyway, the ones, but the like skill cards have the talent trait too. So I'm not sure.
I guess.
Anyway, the ones we got in the core set. Comparing them to those, they're one thing I really like about them is that they're fast. They're cheaper, which is cool because one of the big things, one of the reasons I came out of the gate kind of really negative on them, I've softened since then, but one of the reasons I came out of the gate really negative on the core set ones was, okay, it cost me an action and 2 resources to put it down. Most of the time I don't feel like I have that to spare, and I got to spend resources to actually use it, so it's just like, yeah. So I've kind of come around to the idea that I'm generally okay with these kinds of assets when the investigator I'm playing has a resource engine.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. When they don't, hard pass.
And that's, I think, the problem that I ran into was that I put it in a roll-in deck, and Guardian, in general, has trouble with resources at lower levels. And that's exactly what happened. Like, they didn't have I've Had Worse in there yet. And other than Emergency Quiche, there really wasn't anything else generating resources in that deck. So it was just kind of like, I can spend the resource to get it out, and then I gotta wait a turn or two, you know, to bank resources and actually make it useful. So I think the problem was that the person who played this deck put it into play with the intent to use it later, rather than you put it into play and use it the same turn, and then expect to lose it soon afterwards. I kind of think they're more of like a hot button, rather than something that you like sit on for a while.
Now, am I not mistaken in that you could play this when the test initiates in that window?
Oh, yeah.
So you can wait until the very test that you want to use it for comes into play. Yep. And that's one of the, I think, commonly overlooked values of the fast keyword. Yeah. Like, with Switchblade or anything like that. Like, Switchblade to me is, I don't throw that down until the enemy is upon me.
Right.
Yeah. Now, it should be said that with fast, you can't do it during like a Mythos phase test check, because it's an asset. It still has to be during your player phase. But yes,
right. Yeah.
I do like that it's another Moxie in particular is another tool for Skids to get out of his willpower hole.
Just gonna mention that.
And I do like. I'm just thinking about the ones that I think have a bit more application just off the top of my head. I do like Plucky for Survivors because it has the intellect boost, which can help people like Yorick when he's not using his tricks, or even Ashcan, so he doesn't have to use Duke all the time, those kind of things.
What about Grounded? Because that one is strikingly different than the rest in that it calls out a specific card type.
I mean, I think you could just basically, instead of when it says test on a spell card, it could basically say a willpower test.
Yeah, and that's what I'm kind of curious. Like, I know they're just leaving the option open for later spells that aren't based on willpower, but do we think that's ever going to actually be applicable?
Do we have any spells currently that test something other than willpower?
Yes.
Which one?
The when you solve the the
glyphs?
secret card, the glyphs. Some of them are spells, aren't they?
And they don't. And they call for a test that isn't willpower.
Or they take up. One sec. I need to look up the.
Okay. Because I didn't think they dealt with willpower, but I guess I didn't think they had a test at all. I thought it was just... But I don't know. I have never done the glyphs. So...
Yeah. I need to... You know what was really funny? It's a side tangent and slightly related to the glyphs, but I was playing my... So when I first built my Norman deck, I kind of was apparently operating in like 50% brain capacity. So I'm going through the campaign with Norman and Zoe.
I see where this is going.
And I kind of hit a lull in Echoes of the Past, turns out. And I throw down my strange solution. I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to identify this bitch right now. And then I identified, I'm like, yeah! I write it all up in my campaign log. Finish the scenario, I'm all pumped because I got all this XP. And I go like, alright, strange solution. Whoops.
How crazy would it be if eventually they do that, where you get a Seeker-style card like that upgrades into a non-Seeker card? Like, wouldn't that be nuts? That'd be so cool.
So
I would encourage such a thing. That gives the investigators who have really like either dual class or just wacky deck building rules really a lot of value.
So the archaic glyphs that are upgraded are in a Phantom of Truth. And both of them, you investigate. They are spells, so you spend a charge and you investigate, and it does something. Just for spoiler stuff, but yeah, you investigate.
So presumably you'd be using intellect.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I had completely overlooked that they had spell traits.
Yeah. Have you guys I'm gonna throw this at Nick. Nick, how awesome are the Desperate cards in?
Oh my god. Oh my god! Like, forget the regular skills. Seriously. Like, I'll put in 2 Unexpected Courages and then, like, 1 of each of the Desperates. And I'm like, I'm fucking good to go!
Especially when you can get 2 horror on them, and then you just, like, throw out your Seeker allies who just become horror sponges. Yeah.
In my current Roland build, he has, like, 1 mental trauma, and I was like, I don't even care. Like, that's great. Like, awesome. I'm 1 step closer to getting these bomb-ass skills on the table. I love it. I love it.
A Desperate Duke as well, or Desperate Ashcan, works really well.
That's, I mentioned last time we recorded, I kind of am running that hello, this is dog type build, where it's Ashcan with calling in favors and that sort of thing. And I'm running 1 of each of the desperate skills in that one too, because I managed to accrue a mental trauma in the second scenario of the campaign, so I'm already starting at 4 sanity. It's so consistent and easy to get down to 3 sanity, and then all of a sudden Duke's bouncing back to hand to heal horror, and I've got other allies popping out, and it's a good time. So, and then kind of popping back to the composure traits, I feel like these are ones that are just like not just like, very similar in respect to the core set pumpers, I guess. Mm-hmm. If it's filling a slot that investigator needs, I'm going to look at it real long and hard. Like, I have a kind of a Clouvery Wendy, and, which one is that? Plucky works really well in that deck. So that one I think is probably the one I've gotten the most use out of, but I have what did I put in? I have my Lola build has scientific theory in it, and I'll be very interested to see if I regret that choice.
Would it be? Do you think it'd be a fair assessment to say that of those, like, considering the current card pool, that combat training and grounded are probably the 2 that are the least useful? Because combat training, like, when you're playing Guardian, you'd much rather just beat the enemy down than dodge it or evade it. And grounded, like, mystics and spellcasting characters generally have enough skill boosters or whatever that they already have. Like, they don't really need grounded too much. So
Yeah.
I would tend to agree.
Yeah. And scientific theory, I mean, it's a seeker card. It's outpaced, I think, by higher ed.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like,
I
As
think
so many
I
things
think
are.
scientific theory just doesn't have its investigator yet. I feel like it's okay in Roland.
it could be Roland, yeah, absolutely.
But I feel like most of the seekers that we have, they don't really want a whole lot by way of combat ability.
Right.
They've got other ways to mitigate and manage enemies. But when we get one that cares, this is going to be an awesome card.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a fair amount. There's some really good cards in this pack now that I'm looking at it again.
Yeah, Cherished Keepsake, Heroic Rescue,
Yes.
Anatomical Diagrams. Is pretty much everything but Knuckle Duster.
You know what?
Knuckle Dusters!
Everyone's hating on Knuckle Duster, but that is another one that's just waiting for the right investigator.
Yeah, it's waiting for Michael McGlynn.
Yeah.
Because we always talk about damage bonus is what we take weapons for, and I know this one's got a pretty big drawback, but there's going to be investigator where you don't care.
Yeah,
Like
that's
if
fair.
Mark could take Knuckle Dusters,
Right, that's it. I think that's
Game
the problem,
on.
is the rogue characters. What's the highest combat among rogue characters? 3?
3?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
ouch.
not fun. Unless you're playing easy. Sure, then throw Knuckle Dusters in there, but...
Yeah.
All right. So, then since we're already talking about player cards, let's move it on into the player cards for the Unspeakable Oath. Any there that you guys would call special mention to? Pulling them up here.
Well, Calling in Favors has spawned, like, deck types. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the most notable for sure at first glance.
It's like, hey, remember that trait that's pretty much the most powerful trait in the game? Here's something that lets you, like, tutor it, make it cheaper, and heal shit off of it. So good.
Forewarned and Test of Will. A Test of Will.
yeah.
It's nice to see that we're getting those the encounter one. We already knew they were coming, but it's nice to actually have them now to cancel encounter cards. And also, we mentioned it earlier, but level 1 Book of Shadows was a good addition.
Yeah.
We didn't mention it earlier on the show. That was off air. Okay. That was
Oh, was it off air? Okay, I forget when we were, hanging out in the
I know.
hallway versus in the conference room, but...
I know.
I like
also-
fight or flight a lot.
Yeah. I was
The
gonna
interns
say,
weren't taking notes out there.
Ian, like, that is the sleeper hit of the pack, I think. Fight or
Yeah.
Flight. Like,
Yes. Oh my god. Okay. Fight or flight in my insane desperate Duke build where he's starting with the horror, probably going to get a couple more, and oh my god, I have Fire Axe, I have what's the resourceful where you can pull this back and play it again. Fight or flight is a bomb card.
Yeah.
It's
fast. It buffs both for the whole round. It's crazy.
yeah. This
For one cost.
This card has gotten my Wendy deck out of a lot of issues. It's like I have Peter Sylvester down, and then I play Fight or Flight, and I'm evading at 10. It's just like, I don't know what cannot be evaded. It's yeah.
So, Ian, as another person who plays Jenny frequently, and I ran into this when Sean and I played a game on Tabletop Simulator.
Oh well, we don't want to judge anything based on that game. That was...
No, but at the same, when I was building the deck, I was staring long and hard at Dario Elamine, and I was like, I want to include him, but like when I included him in my at home Jenny deck, it never became necessarily useful. And so I didn't do him on Tabletop Simulator. How do you feel about Dario?
I like Dario. He's not like a auto include for Jenny, I would say, but because it depends on the build. But I think he kind of fills the role for me specifically. Not so much in gaining the resources because that's more just getting you there. But Jenny's gonna get there, but just for the +1 intellect and +1 will more so. The reason I like it is because in the past sometimes I'd lean on Christopher Milan for Jenny, mostly to get the +1 intellect to take her up to 4, which is a huge difference. But then with Dario, basically, he doesn't do exactly the same thing because you have to. It takes a little bit longer to get online. But the big thing is that then it frees up those off-class slots for her. So
That's true. Yeah, when Sean and I were... Oh, go ahead.
It's basically a thing, though. Of course, you're going to want charisma because it's like Dario's not enough. You also need like Leo or someone else alongside.
Yeah. I think if you don't want charisma, you're doing something special.
Well, and Sean, I discussed it with Sean, and the conclusion I came to was just like, yeah, Jenny gets resources fast, and Skids does too, to an extent with his Elder Sign ability. But it's like, but you want to spend those resources. Like, there's so many tools available to these characters that spending the resources are good. And Dario requires you to just bank 10. So I'm kind of feeling like he's kind of like in the knuckle duster, bin, where it's like we just don't have an investigator that jives with him 100%. But I also could not be. I don't play Rogue all the time, and when I do, I pretty much just play Jenny. So
he's alright for Safina. Those are both the stats that she wants.
Sure. Does she get to 10 resources decently?
Yeah, she definitely can, especially once you get into, if you're like painting Hot Streak later.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Once she has some XP, man, she is a different investigator. Holy cow.
I'd say of the three who are probably going to be taking it, or who could think about taking it, because I don't think Wendy's going to be interested in Dario, but
any Dunwich Gator could take him.
Sure. I'd say Skids is probably the least, just because Skids needs to be spending his resources for other things, but Jenny and Safina are both can make use.
I mean,
you know what? When we get Charlie Kane and he starts in play with 20 resources or whatever, like I could see. I obviously no idea if we'll get Charlie or what his ability will be, but I could see him potentially jiving with Dario pretty well.
Hell, I'll be surprised if Charlie doesn't have the patron trait.
Yeah.
But yeah, Book of Shadows is one that I did want to kind of dial back to real quick here, because I love this game, and this is what we were talking about ahead of the show, but I love in this game how the levels just give the designers so much more room to do, Book of Shadows, huh? Everyone's kind of cold on that. Well, here we go, draft 2. Let's either throw a couple XP on it or take a couple XP away and see what happens. And now Daisy can take it. I'm so excited for my next Daisy build, where she can actually take a second tome that I care about.
Yep.
And we should mention Storm of Spirits for multiplayer in particular, because...
Oh, yes. I was about to.
It gets, insane. I remember at our Invocation event where there were a couple of Storm of Spirits dropped that took out like 4 or 5 enemies.
Sneak Attack level 2 is a phenomenal upgrade. I personally think.
Yep.
Agreed.
The fact that it goes from exhaust to just not engaged with you is huge.
Yep.
Yeah, especially in multiplayer. In multiplayer, that's amazing. And again, like couple XP on Safina, that's not a bad way to spend it.
And the icons
for those
too.
aloof enemies are annoying. So now you don't have to engage the aloofs anymore.
Yeah. Even
Whippoorwill Killer.
Yeah, the icon upgrade too, like giving it 2 fists. I like that.
I love the idea of sneak attacking whippoorwills.
Gotta sneak up on them.
Pop up.
Blackjack.
Pop out of the nest. Surprise, motherfucker!
Has anybody built any weird, like, Seeker asset support deck with Charles Ross Esquire? I haven't even put him in a deck yet.
Yeah,
I need to compile a list of items. You know what? Right? I suspicion, and I'm going to put this out there and then immediately build it after we get off. There's got to be a Lola support deck that can take just a ton of item assets and can play that card pretty well. But the problem is, with Lola, you have such a big deck, it's so hard to draw him consistently.
That's true.
So,
Yeah.
anyway.
See,
I'm still going to suss it out.
I keep thinking of it like throw him in a support deck and not necessarily in a buff your own item. I guess he does do the same thing for you as he would for anybody else.
No, I'm talking about this as being like player 3 or 4 in a campaign.
Oh, sure.
I think you could throw him in a min deck and play like super support. Because like if you ever get her special ability out, just make things cheap, throw skill cards everywhere. Like you're basically the kid in the Shake and Bake commercial, right? And I helped.
If you go with Lola, you could do Charles Ross Esquire and then maybe throw in like teamwork and get your shit out there super cheap and then shuffle it off to other players.
Well, this is definitely something we have to explore.
Yeah, I think
let's all build a copy and then round back on the next episode.
I never thought about Lola, but yeah, once you brought that up, suddenly my mind's going like, ooh, like,
Well, my first thought is, okay, you have to be able to take enough items to make this worth it. Well, who can take a fuck ton of items?
Yeah. Yeah, Lola. Well, Lola. Anybody who's Guardian and Rogue, and then Seeker would be your third class, so there you go.
Yep.
Lola in the prop department. That's the guy.
Awesome.
Filling in for the stage manager.
She's basically Mary Poppins. Yeah.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all! That was a Guardians reference for you. Okay, so let's actually talk about the Unspeakable Oath. So off to Arkham Asylum. Batman listeners, your moment has finally come.
Finally.
Long awaited. So I thought the setup for this one was pretty cool. The map, I think, is very distinct from things we've seen before. How did you guys feel about the map itself?
Loved it.
It felt like an asylum with halls. Mm-hmm. Like, it felt like what it looked like.
And it looked like what it felt like.
All right, well, that was far shallower a question than I thought it was going to be, so let's move on to the next one.
I just want to say, Echoes is one that we discussed as being super easy for solo and more difficult for 2+.
Yeah.
Unspeakable Oath is
so the opposite
brutal
direction.
On solo.
Yep.
Like, it's so hard. Unless you're building specifically for this scenario, it's so hard on solo.
Well, that's something
There's
to mention
so
about
much
the
ground
map
to cover.
Is that that the map is, because of the way it's set up, it's not necessarily big in the sense of number of locations, but it's kind of
it's shaped like a shuriken. Whatever those ninjas throw around.
Yeah,
and you have to go back and forth. Like you have to pick your path, especially in solo. In early game, you have to pick your path very carefully, because there are times later on that you will have to double back and go to locations you've already been to, and ones that are like down another route that was like tangential to where like it's so. Oh my god, I can't get over it.
It's a super rough blind play when you don't know anything about the paths or what you're trying to do. Like, that was my R.I.P. York.
Well, yeah, exactly. That was my R.I.P. Daisy.
I lost Jenny.
Not just like the distance and the face checking. You're like, I don't know which way to go. But it's like, remember, you started a fight. And you're like, do I want to start a fight? Yeah! Right? Because, do I want to steal the luggage? I don't know what I want to do. And if you don't know what you're going for, you're like, no, I'm just going to hang out for a bit, and...
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, a different feel. Like, I haven't... Not even in Midnight Masks did I get this weird feeling of having to double back and all that, because Midnight Masks, the traversal was more like, go here, do this, go here, do this. Mm-hmm. Whereas this, it's like, which direction do I go? Oh, I guess I pick the wrong direction every single time. Like, it's so, it is crazy how much it swings like that. Mm-hmm. I, like, even in my first game, I thought, okay, I have a feeling like the basement is going to be important later, so I'm going to go away from the basement. And then it's like, okay, now I got to cross the distance to get back to the basement. Mm-hmm. And then after the basement, then it's like, oh, now I got to go to these other rooms to do these other things, and then go. Like, it's just, it's crazy. I don't even know.
I've found the same issue that you guys are talking about in True Solo applies when I'm using even two-handed investigators that are specialized. Mm. So, for instance, right now, I'm running my Lola and Mark campaign. Lola's really decked out to get clues. Mark is Mark. And, they kind of have to travel together to a certain extent, because Mark's kind of covering Lola and making sure she's not getting too distracted from getting clues and whatnot. And, there's just so much ground to cover. So, I think this time was my most educated playthrough, because I've played through it, several times at this point. I ended up never even going to the kitchen. I went straight, I beelined to the infirmary, collected clues on the way, got to the basement from there, and, I just never ended up going to the kitchen. I even left 2 clues on the mess hall because I had to abandon it at one point. God, the mess hall! Discarding so many stupid cards.
Ugh. Yeah.
And that one, I think, is another good example of that one just scaling against multiplayer because, in single player, you lose one card to get a clue. It's like, if someone's going to camp on that location in 4-player and clear it, like, they are forfeiting their hand to do so.
I think what adds to it all, not just the map and not just the backtracking and all that, which is part of it, but then you add on top of it a lot of treacheries that are designed to slow you down, like Straitjacket and the hidden cards. Those all work together to just slow you down even more. There's a lot of tough decisions to be made, and if you get hit in the wrong order, then it can make it a really tough time.
What's funny is I was trying to get through the mess hall with Daisy and doing the discarding a card and whatnot. And I went to, at the end of my turn, I was like, I have higher education, I have 4 cards. I'm like, well, maybe after I get my Mythos card, I can draw another card. It's one of the hidden things. I'm like, all right, so higher ed is on. So playing solo Daisy, sometimes or just solo in general, sometimes those hidden cards are not the worst if you have higher ed.
No.
Specifically higher ed. Every other time they're average to okay.
I've run into situations where I'm like, I'll just hang on to this hidden card for a while because it's not hurting me.
Yeah.
But that was more so in like Curtain Call. This scenario, despite them being the same, they felt more punishing because
we got a couple of extras.
True, yeah, but I mean, even with the vanilla ones, or the original ones, like you rely more on your tricks, I think, in this scenario than you do in Curtain Call. So, not being able to play events, not being able to move more than once, like those sort of things.
That one hurts.
Yes, they all really limit it. And not only that, but like you mentioned Straitjacket, and can I just say that Straitjacket is probably simultaneously my favorite and my least favorite encounter card ever designed. Because it's really cool, and I love the design of it, but boy, like, I'm still struggling to get my Roland deck through that scenario because, spoiler alert, I'm one of the guys who, after my face check campaign, then the next time I go through, if I fail a scenario, I reset and I do it again. like, nope, I'm getting through it. And that card has single-handedly ruined that scenario for me multiple times.
Speaking of fun combos, one of my favorites is when you get Straitjacket and you lose, like, a 45 and a flashlight, and then you pull frickin' Corrosion next turn and get them discarded from your hand.
Yeah. Ugh.
The thing about the hidden cards is I've ran into situations where I'm just like, I'll hold on to this one, and then you get a second one. I guess I'll hold on to this one. And then you get a third one. It's like, if you don't get ahead of the early ones, then you can end up in situations where you're just like, I can't do anything now.
Yeah, and you don't have the actions to spend on them either because
it's like falling into the Whipper whirlpool. Like they just nickel and dime you till all of a sudden you're like, oh, I didn't realize the box had gotten this small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know for sure, like, when I had a Ward of Protection in my hand, I was like, well, that's for Straitjacket, and I literally turned it upside down in my hand. Like, when I see Straitjacket, I play this card. Every other treachery, I just deal with. Like, it's that bad of a card. So
Straitjacket has made me start to, and I know I brought it up back when the scenario first released, I brought it up in our Discord channel, but it's made me start to theorize about building a deck that doesn't use assets, zero assets. And right now we can't, but McDog3 brought up in the chat, I think that the investigator who eventually could get to that point is probably Min. And you would still put assets in her deck, but you would use them. Or
Mystics stand a pretty good chance of being effective without hands.
Oh, sure, yeah, because of Arcane. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. You're right. But yeah, like, it's totally just like that's because one of my favorite. I'm not even going to get into it. There was an old card game I used to play, and there was a certain build for a certain character that didn't use permanent cards or assets at all, and I really love that. So,
what game were you about to mention?
Fight Club.
Yeah, okay,
Fight Club. Yeah, there was the character from Lost Boys, the vampire character. There was a really cool build for him that didn't use any cards that stayed in play.
Oh my god, there's a Lost Boys deck?
Yeah! Yep. What's his name? Michael what?
Yeah, Michael's definitely a character. I forgot his name.
It's him. And his whole character worked on recurring events from your discard pile. So then you would build a deck that didn't have anything but useful events. Anyway, so that made me think, like, what if you could do that in Arkham? And yeah, I would love to get to that point at some point.
I feel like it's going to be Survivor because of resourceful.
And Min can
just
take
general
Survivor.
Recursion. Yeah, so you might be right. Mm-hmm. I still need to make my Min in the chair deck where it's just her
She's a turret.
analytical mind and in the know, and then she just pops barricade down on her location and just camps the whole scenario.
She's like Professor X, but
exactly. Cerebro Min.
Yeah.
It's going to be a thing. Okay. So kind of general strategies. Do you guys have a way you move through the map? Like I know I mentioned I generally, when in doubt, try to beeline straight for the infirmary and then kind of deal with the basement after that. But do you guys have a flow that you like?
Is the infirmary the far right location?
Yeah, it's the one that's closer to the basement.
That's where I go every time. Like after my first game, that's where I go every time.
Yeah, that face check is always a memorable experience, isn't it?
It's pretty much just planning for you need those 4 special conditions at the end, and you can get 2 of them on the way out. So it's kind of a matter of knowing that you're going to need to pick up 2 along the way, probably in the basement somewhere. So yeah, it's generally going to the infirmary, down to the basement, and then back up through. But of course, that's the best laid plan. Sometimes I've had to deviate from that.
Okay. So then I suppose resolutions, there's not a whole lot by way of resolutions. You either make it out or you don't. And if you don't... What did you guys think about the choice there to say, nope, you're stuck in the asylum now, pick new investigators?
I loved it. I thought, like, the theme of it, when I read this, I was like, yes, this is happening, even though I just lost. I was like, I'm so happy this exists.
Yep.
Yeah. I was really happy.
I was... Yeah.
I feel like I went into this scenario, like, on a low level, creeped out just because of the asylum setting, which is... just has weird associations with it, but throughout I just had this weird feeling of like, I feel like something really bad is going to happen if I don't get out. And of course Yorick didn't, and I read that and I was a weird combination of surprised but also not surprised. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like,
yeah.
We haven't talked much about story so far, but just the whole, I think that's also added to the creepiness of it, because the story along the way was just giving you the sense of, like, it could easily go the way of, like, you're already crazy and you're just imagining all this, like, the fact there's no doctors or nurses around. When you first walk in, the God, I can't think of the name for it. Not the orderly, but the receptionist is just kind of like, yeah, whatever, and is just treating you, like, giving some not so subtle signals to the guards. So,
and please see this man into the asylum.
Wink, wink. It's like, I'm looking right at you. I can see you winking.
Worth it.
It's
and
like
then,
that scene in episode 3 when Darth Sidious is like, and make sure you take care of them. And then
one of my favorite ones was the first time I walked into the patient confinement familiar cell.
Yes.
And you recalled the way out. It's like, what? What does that mean?
Yeah, definitely. Really cool.
Leave it to me to pick the most obvious of the little hints.
And
Ian goes with all the subtle ones.
and it's like, Dunwich already prepared us for this by potentially ending the campaign on 7. And by now having a potential end of the campaign on 4, like, maybe the next campaign, like, in the core box, it's like, nope, you're done. Like, see ya. Like, you know, now it's kind of like the Wild West, where it's like, it can be at any time. You know what I mean? And so the edge has been taken off of it, and I was a lot more like, okay, I understand. But at the same time, when Jenny got committed to the asylum, I did not make a new character. I'm like, I'm not starting scenario 5 at level 0. I am.
That was my next question.
Well,
who has?
Sorry, I have to address that right now because this is the rules.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you, because of the way the text is written, so this is the big thing that came from Matt that is kind of changing how we interpret the game. So your investigator is driven insane. Then you're told to choose a new investigator. If they have the black onyx clasp or whatever, put it into their deck. Then you get the XP from the scenario. So if your Jenny went insane, the next character you build gets the XP you earned during this scenario.
From the scenario they went, so you get like a little, you get like a stipend.
Yes.
You get like a little, like, sorry, here, enjoy this $2 bill.
Yeah. Sorry, per diem's down, the budget's rough this year.
Yeah, so
exactly.
So you're not level 0. You're pretty close though. But I'm close. Yeah, that was the big rule.
I'd rather have and that's like that helps, but I still. Like, I was already well into a strategy with Jenny, and the next character would have a step forward halfway through the campaign. So I'd rather just reset and start over.
Yeah, and
I wasn't planning on continuing Yorick after the Yorick campaign after he went insane. But then once I saw how they were kind of handling it in Phantom, I was like, okay, I'm gonna roll with this. So then Agnes is basically picking up from Yorick. I like to imagine that like he was a customer at the diner and was talking about the weird stuff. So now she's picking up the story. But
it introduces really cool narrative implications, especially the fact it's changing up the fact that we can't say my Jenny campaign, my Yorick campaign. Because have any of us in true solo beaten this scenario yet?
I did once, yes.
Have not played it in true solo.
Okay. So two of the four of us. That's 50%. That's pretty hard.
And that's I think I've played the scenario 5 times solo. I've beat it once
in
5, right? It's
exactly.
Yeah.
And my wins were close. It wasn't I ran away with it in true solo. I think they both came down to last turn type thing.
Yeah, mine was last turn. I don't remember how many actions I had left, but it was last turn. So
it's almost like the intended narrative of this campaign is that one person gets too far and then is removed from the story because they've seen too much or whatever, they went too far into it, and someone else has to come in Act 2 of the film and pick up the pieces. And maybe
Nick,
that's
how many of those inmates do you think might have been on the trail too? This could be Act 16.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's really cool. I honestly just came to that conclusion now. I guess I'm a little behind the times on that, but it really gets me excited to just say, no, I'm going to continue whether I fail or not.
I think the big point here too is that where Doom awaits, it's campaign's over, the investigators have failed the campaign, right? Whereas this one, it's if there's not enough investigators continue, so you killed every single investigator on the way here somehow, it's over. Otherwise, the campaign continues, right? Totally, that is the story element, I think, where even if you're playing 4-player, maybe 2 people don't get out of the asylum, right? And it's I really like it for the storytelling aspect. A little bit sad that you could lose a character halfway. It's going to make Arkham Knight's Iron Man really interesting this year.
Oh, it sure is.
Yeah.
Everyone bring 2 decks. But
I think part of the upside is this has become one of my favorite scenarios. It's definitely my top 5.
Yes,
because I think that element just adds to it, that feeling of it's so tense at the end when you're coming down to those last few turns and trying to make your beeline. And I think someone mentioned earlier about how you have to use your tricks a lot. It's true. A lot of the times, the couple times I have been successful, it has been you end up using every last trick in your book to try to dodge around, get to where you need to go, and get out of there.
Yeah, I normally my general for my quote unquote lead investigator build for Roland, where it's primarily yellow cards with some blue enemy management. I normally remove shortcut for Pathfinder. That's just what I do. And for this scenario, I ended up teching back in shortcut because it's no, I need all the mobility I can get. You really do rely on everything that you have at your disposal. So
also, shortcut's just an amazing card by itself too.
It's really good. But I mean, it and Pathfinder filled the same role. So in a 30 card deck, I had to drop one of them. But
yeah, any movement stuff is huge. Even two-handed, sometimes it can be tough. I was running Jenny and Akachi, and thankfully, Jenny, of course, had elusive, but thankfully I was choosing to run a single copy of Astral Travel and Akachi, and that was key at the end to have her teleport all the way to the basement to catch up with Jenny so they could get out of there.
I haven't... Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, I agree. The tricks thing is totally true, because in my two-player, during my Mark and Lola campaign here, I had the same issues that I normally have with Specialists. The only reason I was able to make it out is Lola drew her I'm out of here pretty early in the game, so I'm like, okay, we can do a thing here. So as things were starting to ramp up, I split them up and made Mark start going toward the yard, and Lola kind of stuck down by the basement, and Mark cleared the way, got the Resign out, and Lola's out of there. Go ahead, Nick. He's muted.
Yeah, I think.
All right.
The other interesting part of it that they added was kind of shuffling these unknown monsters in, and that
talk about creating a real life sense of dread, right?
Yeah, that also added to the dread and kind of doing whatever it took to avoid that happening. But yeah.
Lord of the Rings has taught me that's not a thing that you want to have happen.
No, definitely not. Especially since as the deck goes on, of course it's getting smaller, and then you're shuffling into a smaller and smaller deck. It's like, oh god, I'm really like screwing myself at the end here by shuffling the worst stuff.
Yeah. So talking about one Daniel Chesterfield. And how he was addressed. How'd you guys find him as kind of a linchpin objective of the whole thing?
I liked him. I thought it was neat. It didn't stand out to me as much as the possibility of ending campaigns or whatever, which I think kind of almost... Like,
it does overshadow things.
Exactly, right? Because that's the one thing you remember about the scenario. But I like that so close to grabbing the clasp, you know what it could be used for. Yeah, I thought it was neat.
Now, I've started to see little things here that make me think that Matt Newman is playing with us in real life. When I'm looking at Daniel Chesterfield's
just now, you're
side,
figuring that out. Like, okay, yeah.
Oh, okay. So when I'm looking at Daniel Chesterfield's backside, he has the parlay option. Yeah, well, yeah. He's got the parlay option to show him the Onyx clasp to basically just make him fold up and go away. But am I right in saying that you don't ever see the enemy side of him if you have the clasp? So that's just text that's there to throw you off, like those old math problems where they'd give you more numbers than you actually need?
I think if you...
Or am I missing a way?
Isn't it if you don't have the clasp, he comes out as an enemy... But then if you draw the clasp later on, you can play it, and then...
I think it's as long as you took the clasp, then he comes out as an enemy, I'm pretty sure.
Well, let's see. I've got the setup text right in front of me. So let's see here. So if you took the Onyx clasp, you use version 1 of the really bad ones.
Right. Yeah, so there's no way for that text to actually matter.
Okay. Just making sure I saw that correctly.
But there's nothing to say he might not pop up again in a future scenario. So.
Like, the way this works kind of makes me wonder, like, if at the end of the scenario, like scenario, you know, the last one or the second to last one, if you fail it, like, maybe you loop back in time with everything that you have and play through the you know, certain parts of the campaign again or something like that. Or maybe it's just Matt fucking with us. That's definitely a window I'm willing to peek in.
So if you... Sorry, so for the setup text, if you took the clasp, you use version 2?
You use version 1 if you took the clasp. Right?
Yep.
And version 1 is the one that puts his ally side into play. And nothing on the ally says you flip him, right? Like,
nope.
If he goes away, he's just removed from the game. So I don't know. Either that's a very, very cunningly hidden text for some weird gameplay stuff we're going to have, or it's just there to fuck with us.
Yeah, maybe.
So, yeah. And then we kind of had, you know, it's not the center of the cycle like Blood on the Altar was, but we kind of had that debrief with the ally that we rescued, like we did for Dunwich. The warning, I suppose, is the big piece to come out of that. How have you guys decided whether you're heeding or ignoring said warning?
Well, if I'm gonna play Scatterbrain Daisy, she's ignoring it because it's coming from a madman. So she's like, "I'm not listening to you." So that's my goal.
I thought she was easily scared.
She is, but she's scared of everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. At least the way I'm role playing her.
Yeah, it's also a roleplay thing for me, depending on, and if they're already in like the conviction mode, then I figure they're all in at this point and listening to what this person is saying.
That's exactly where I was hoping to go with this. Like, as you guys kind of go through and role play these story decisions, are you finding that your investigators are just hard lining down either conviction or doubt, or are you finding that maybe there is some gray area for certain investigators? Hard lines for me.
Yeah, I think hard lines. Same.
It's been mostly hard lines, except for Yorick, and now he's gone, so...
So the hardest line of all.
Yes!
It's funny because, again, like, I love tabletop role-playing games, but I just don't roleplay this game. Like, I don't. My face check campaign I usually do, but then the second or third time through a campaign, I'm all game. Like, I'm all, like... I want to explore the choices I didn't do, or I want to do as well as possible. And so I tend to be hard lines as well, coincidentally.
I think I'm gonna have to mock up a campaign just to kind of throw things around and see how things work differently when you actually are kind of in between. Because I think every campaign I have there's at least a 3-point differential between conviction and doubt one way or the other, depending on who it is. So
Sure.
Okay, so I know we've already kind of touched on the story implications of everything going on here. This one was interesting. I feel like this was the turning point. Obviously, geographically, it's the turning point because we head off to Paris after this. How are you guys feeling about the story of the campaign so far? Let's turn it there.
110% my favorite campaign so far.
I was gonna say it's much more interesting than Dunwich. Like, Dunwich is it's a decent story, and it's kind of like, you know, H.P. Lovecraft in a box. You know what I mean? But this is so much more interesting of a narrative.
Yeah. Like, I think
I would agree.
Dunwich is a fun adventure. This one is already like fourth wall breaking, making me a little bit creeped out. Like, it's even the descriptions in the first scenario of the campaign, I was like, ugh. Like, I was a little bit grossed out. And, like, now with the asylum, like, what's going on? Like, did I really burn down a house of people? Like, were they ghouls? Were they not? I'm
just constantly floored with how well Matt has been able to just project that feeling of the unreliable narrator onto the players who are very decidedly seeing and doing everything that's happening.
Right.
It's kind of unreal.
He's making me feel unreliable. Like, me unreliable. Which, amazing. So,
I feel like it's also really tough to do. Like,
oh yeah.
It's something that you could see on the outside and be like, oh, that's not too tough. But I feel like it's difficult to make it look easy, but it would really stand out if it was done poorly, I feel like. But to be able to kind of play and manipulate the players like he's doing to make us question every little element of the story and the mechanics, I think has been really well done. And the Asylum has been the culmination of it. We'll talk about the other scenarios in a future episode, but just the level of kind of doubt that was able to creep in by the time you get to the asylum, and just wonder, you are just literally wondering, like, are they just imagining this all in their heads by this point?
Right. No, it's wonderful. Like, we were all surprised when Carcosa was announced after Dunwich, like that Matt or that the Arkham team would go to a story like Carcosa when there were so many other quote-unquote more obvious choices for an H.P. Lovecraft. Like, you kind of feel like there's the big three or big four that you have to check off the list first. Like, there's Yog-Sothoth, there's Shub, there's Cthulhu, but no, he went right to Carcosa next. And I applaud him for that, because it's so different from Dunwich. in its framing and its narrative and everything like that it feels
so much
like
more cerebral.
Exactly, yeah. So now it kind of feels like we've had the extremes. Well, haven't had them yet because we're not done with Carcosa yet, obviously. But we're getting the two extremes where it's like we have, again, H.P. Lovecraft in a box. Like, this is a game about H.P. Lovecraft stuff, so it's structured like a game. And this other one is like, we're going to break all the rules in this game. And so then I'm really excited to see where they go next, if it's going to be like in between those two, or if it's going to be back to more of like a standard like RPG campaign, like what Dunwich was. It's really interesting to see that they're already shifting the dynamics so much with Carcosa.
They almost always hit up with Mountains of Madness or Egypt pretty early on in an Arkham Files game. Its life. So if I had to put money somewhere, it would be on one of those two themes.
I've been leaning towards Mountains as well. Like, I would love
I really want to see Mountains personally.
It's among my favorite of the stories, so I would love it. And I know I'm not alone. I know there's a lot of people who feel the same way. But at the same time, that kind of feels like an obvious choice. So we might get something, totally different.
Return to Night of the Zealot.
Night of the Zealot 3.
The Day of the Zealot.
Not Z Harder.
Oh my god, if we got a Day of the Zealot and it was just a straight up sequel, that was another 3 scenario campaign, I would lose my mind, because that would be amazing! Imagine if they started doing sequels to campaigns!
Yeah. Mecha Mordhoth.
Mecha Mordhoth. Jeez.
Alright, well, any closing thoughts on the story so far? Besides that it's awesome.
Yep.
And making us go real life insane.
Pretty much.
All right, so then let's move it on into a little bit of hotline catch up. So we actually got this call, I want to say back in December from Aaron. We haven't had a chance to air it yet because our episodes have just kind of gotten wacky since the holidays. But here we are, and we've already actually kind of touched on this, so let's kind of bring it home.
Hey, Mythos Busters. This is Aaron Freeman calling from Arcata, California. I have a question for you guys. What's your plans for the Desperate skill cards that just came out in Echoes of the Past? Are they just something that you're going to be using for hard difficulty and expert? Or is there an investigator that really jives with those? I'm thinking Lola and Skids, but what do you guys think? Thanks. Bye.
And anybody with a low sanity threshold, 6 or lower, I think it's good. Even 7 in some cases, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that you got to think about with these things, kind of bringing it back to, kindergarten level, since we've gone past it, is consistency, right? Because if you throw this in Daisy, how consistently is she going to get down to 3 sanity?
Poorly.
These are going to be skill cards waiting for a test, and that's not what you want.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, your Rolands, your Marks, your Dukes, probably Skids and Zoe. I've found I've slipped a couple in Zoe, and that's pretty okay. And it's a really weird out of context sentence, but we're gonna roll with it.
And I don't think it's just for hard and expert or whatever.
No,
I think they're great on standard. I mean, it's just if you slap down 4 icons on a test, you're probably passing that test on standard, and
right,
that's fantastic. Why not play that?
Yeah.
So.
Would you devote card space to these in expert?
Yes.
See, to me, you would like same thing with like when I mentioned Roland earlier, and I said 1 of each plus 2 unexpected courage.
I think you'd pick so with Roland, I'd probably put 2 of the what's the attack one? Overpower, but super duper power.
Reckless
assault or something. Probably willpower as well, because if you're already down to, if you only have 3 sanity left, Roland's biggest issue is the encounter deck with 3 willpower. Right. So one or two of the willpower ones, I wouldn't put 1 of each. I think you decide on what your investigator's going to do, and you put those ones in.
Okay. Yeah, and especially in like expert, like 1 rotting remains can make Roland go insane. On expert, like just 1. So yeah, I feel like I'd pick and choose. You're right, a bit more on expert, but still definitely worth it.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add. Basically, there are certain investigators who definitely can make use of them, but if anyone who's kind of above that 6 sanity threshold, I'm not going to be using the desperate skills much, I think.
Right on. Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. So that's pretty much it. I think they've got a place, but you got to think about it. Is ultimately the thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I also,
of course, you could say that about just about any card in the game, but
except for Unexpected Courage.
Except for,
after experimenting a bit with it too, I also don't think you need to devote much trouble to like trying to turn them on and activate it.
Right.
The game will do it for you.
Especially in this in the campaign that they're released in, this is the perfect campaign for them. So yeah.
But I think, again, you do have to think about it, because the first time I threw them in there, I went about my normal way of, I load up all of my allies first before I touch my investigator. Whereas if you've got those in your deck, you probably want to throw your first 2 or 3 or however many it takes to get to your threshold on your investigator.
Yeah, if you have more than like 1 or 2 of these in your deck, then it's going to change the order of how you apply the damage for sure. The horror, rather. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, on the subject of the Mythos Busters hotline, this is something I wanted to talk about. Now, we've kind of had a die-off a little bit in the call-ins, and that's mostly our fault, because, we let one go for like 2.5 months here.
Whoops.
Almost 3 months without getting answered, so that's bad on us. And the other thing is I've just kind of stopped propping it at the end of the episode. So, to that end, we're revitalizing this thing with a new feature. So you can still call in with any general questions, comments, topic suggestions as you see fit. But the other thing I want to do is every episode we're going to have a question of the episode. So anyone who wants to answer the question can call in, just leave a little answer and their justification why, and at the end of the next episode we'll kind of string those together and play them so that everyone can kind of get an idea of where the community's at. So this week's question: which investigator has the best deck building rules and why?
Min.
Don't you answer yet? We'll talk about it next time.
Roland.
Min, because it uses the best 2 classes. What?
What? Roland does everything you need.
Okay. Well, I don't want to lead the questions, so you guys answer as you see fit. Please call in and let us know which investigator you think has the coolest deck building rules. This is Mythos Busters hotline. That's 203-493-MYTH, 203-493-6984.
And if you go to our Facebook page on your phone, you can just hit call us. That also works.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a few people click on that.
Yeah.
And not leave messages. It's like having a real phone.
Oh God, is someone going to answer? Click.
All right, so then I think we have a 5-star review to get to. Is that accurate? I'm pretty excited about this one.
All right, I got to warm up here. Oh.
Yeah.
To be clear, we actually have a few at the time of this recording, but we're just doing the one because we just saw the other 2 tonight, so we will get to those next episode.
Also, we're going to spread out the love a little bit.
Yeah.
We got a lot of things going, a lot of little irons in the fire for episode segments.
All right, so this is coming from RB West, and I'm supposed to say this in the voice of, what was his name again?
Edward G. Robinson.
Edward G. Robertson. I don't actually know who that is, but I've watched enough Simpsons that apparently it's like Chief Wiggum. So I'm going to try my best at this. I haven't watched Simpsons like 5 years, but all right. Okay, Lou. This podcast has so much going for it, and if you're all into that Arkham Horror LCG, you're definitely doing yourself a disservice by not listening to it regularly. All the hosts are all very knowledgeable, and the interactions amongst them are hilarious. I'm not only learn about the game, but I'm always greatly entertained when I listen to each episode. If I had to pick a downside, which I don't, I would say that there's a severe lack of Brown Jenkins so far, but there's always next episode, right, Lou?
That was like listening to my grandma read the news. That was amazing.
I think there's a little too much JFK in there, I think. But
I was going to say, to me, it sounded like Peter Griffin, like, chewing on a churro stick.
Oh.
And I would say there's a severe lack of brown Jenkin. All right, awesome. So, guys, I think that leads us on into Tentacle time. Nick, what's grabbing you?
Oh, everything but Arkham recently. Like, I have not had time. Well, I shouldn't say I haven't had time, but I just haven't prioritized sitting down to play a game of Arkham yet. Since our tabletop simulator game, Sean. But otherwise...
Well, yeah, after that game, I can see why. It went not well.
Yeah, it did not. Yeah, we did Curtain Call, and I was Jenny, and you were you Min?
Yes, that was Min.
Yeah. We had a rough time of it, sadly. But fun. It got me into Tabletop Simulator, so I've been tooling around on that more. I got the entire Wars collection on there, the released collection on Tabletop Simulator. So if any of you want to learn how to play Wars, just get a hold of me in our Discord chat. I would be very happy to teach you how. Other than that, I've been jumping back into Overwatch pretty heavily with their new cosmetic update and all the new stuff, and the new map, Blizzard World, is a lot of fun. I love it. Absolutely love it. And I love the skins that are characters from their other titles now available in Overwatch, so I've been playing a lot more Widowmaker because she has a Nova skin from StarCraft. And turns out I'm okay as Widowmaker. Well, I have good games, I have bad games. I shouldn't say I'm not consistent with her. But
it's pretty tough on console.
Yeah, it is. Sniping and a character that relies 100% on accuracy was the kind of characters that I tended to avoid before. But now that there's a Nova skin, I'm like, well, I kind of got to play Widowmaker a bit more because I got to show off that Nova skin. Anyway, so Overwatch, and other than that... some of you may have seen me post on Discord about recent auditions. I am joining another community theater production. I'm very excited to get this one underway. It is a musical. It's Young Frankenstein, the musical. Yep. And I am playing... I am lucky enough to be cast as Dr. Frankenstein himself.
It's Frankenstein!
Frankenstein, yes. So... very excited to get that underway. Rehearsals start this coming week of this recording, so I'm really excited to do that. And also, I'm just going to plug it on here since I'm talking about acting, and I want to pat myself on the back a little bit. I was lucky enough, I can now say that I'm an award-winning actor. Last night I went to the Greater Lakes Area Performing Arts Guild Gala. That's a mouthful. GLAPA Guild Gala. And I won the Best Supporting Actor in a Play or Musical or in a play or drama for my role in Play On summer of last year. So that was really a humbling experience, and it makes me want to do more theater this year, but we'll see if that actually happens. Scheduling is hard, folks. So.
Yeah, especially where theater's involved. Good God. Say goodbye to your life.
Yeah, it's like another job that you don't get paid for. So, but it is a lot of fun, and I do love it.
But you get exposure, Nick. You get the exposure.
Yeah, that's true. You know, I get paid in exposure, and man, meals bought with exposure just taste so much better. But no, it's a lot of fun. I love it a lot, and I wish I could do more of it. But yeah, it is a commitment. So,
right on. Well, congratulations on the award.
Thank you.
It seems like it was fun. I know you enjoy your theater.
Oh, yes.
Scott, what's grabbing you?
I recently got the expansion for Star Wars Rebellion, the Rise of the Empire. Super fun. If you haven't played Star Wars Rebellion and you like Star Wars, do yourself a favor and invest the $1,800 or whatever it costs for the base game. It's expensive. It's at least $100. It's super fun. The other one, I got into a game on Xbox called Full Metal Furries, and it's like one of those...
That's not what the show notes say.
Yeah, I was going to say, you wrote something different.
Not furries. Furies.
I totally added that second R.
I thought you did, because I was very deliberate on not typing the second R.
I was really waiting to hear what this game was like, because I was like, really, Scott? I had no idea.
It's art, Nick. It's art.
It's no disparagement of Full Metal Jacket, just played by furries.
I would pay to see that. So, anyways, it's it's like a side scroller, not a platformer, but kind of like. Do you remember the old like Super NES games where you could go up, down, and left and right on the screen, and like you'd shoot guns in different directions. I can't remember any of the names, but like a bunch of ninja.
Like,
So
it's
a
a stick
'em up.
shooter.
Yeah, it's like a 2D shooter, kind of like the
Yeah.
old Ninja Turtles games. You know how you could like move,
But yeah, those are brawlers.
Beat 'em up,
It's
yeah.
it's a shmup.
yeah, okay.
Shoot 'em
It's
up,
like
beat 'em
that
up,
shoot 'em
yep.
up, beat 'em. But there is a melee, couple melee characters in it. Anyways, it's super fun.
Oh, sure.
It's like $20. Get it? If you play on Xbox, let me know. I will play with you.
Is it only on Xbox?
I have no idea.
Scott is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm only on Xbox. It's also like it's. At first, I was like, "Oh yeah, like $20, I'll play it. It'll be like 5 hours of fun or something," which is whatever it is. It is super deep. It has an insane leveling system. Like there is so much content in there. It is very deceiving on how deep this game is. So I would pay more than $20 for this game. I would even pay
Looks
$40.
Well, it's also on Steam, so you could get the Steamed version and get your $40 there.
Yeah. Buy it twice. Spend more money. Yeah, super fun. That's it.
Right on. Ian.
Well, I have a few things. This past few weeks, I've gotten sick twice and had a hobbled foot, so I haven't been able to play much tabletop games because it's just a pain to get over there and play. So I've been more catching up on TV and playing some video games. So as far as TV, I finally watched the whole Luke Cage season 1. Which was, I had watched Daredevil and Jessica Jones, so I was like, I need to keep going with these. So then I watched Luke Cage and freaking loved it. I got obsessed with that show. I feel like any of the Marvel shows, while I'm watching them, I get obsessed with them, but such a good show. I was kind of unsure about it just because sometimes a hero like Luke Cage or Superman, any of those that are invulnerable, I'm like, well, how interesting can they really make it? But I was totally wrong on that count. Just because I feel like they were able to include so much like real world stuff and the Harlem setting, and the music was great, and it was just the actor who played Cottonmouth was amazing. He's so good. He's so good. I wrote on my Facebook that I could watch him act all day. I could. He was so good in that role. And he's going to be in True Detective season 3. So
yes, and he's in House of Cards as well, and he does a phenomenal job in House of Cards.
Nice.
So,
yeah. Yeah. So that was. They just did a good job with it. I think I'm realizing overall, my own personal taste, I just enjoy the Netflix superhero. I just like the superhero TV series much more than the actual Marvel movies. That's just me, but
well, let me know what you think of Iron Fist, because
that does bring me to the next thing, which is
okay,
which is that I've heard so much bad about it that now I just don't know whether I should even bother watching it or not, or skip it.
We got 2 episodes in, and my wife had no desire to continue, and I kind of did. And then Brian, whose opinion matches mine pretty closely for a lot of like TV shows and movies and stuff, said that literally everything after the second episode is garbage. And that
sounds like something Brian would say.
So I haven't gone any further with it, which sucks because I really do like the character of Iron Fist. But
the thing is, I'm the type of person, because I like everything, and sometimes if a show gets mixed reviews, then I'm like, okay, I'll just watch it. But this hasn't even gotten mixed reviews. Like, I literally cannot name a single person I know who liked it. So
yeah,
it's I mean, part of me has that completionist thing of I need to watch it, but I also don't have a ton of time to waste on bad TV shows. So I don't know, But leaving Iron Fist aside, at least the 3 I've watched, Jessica Jones, Daredevil, and Luke Cage, I just like the character development that TV shows allow to really kind of build those things up that the movies can't really do in the same way.
Yeah. Which of those 3... Did you see both seasons of Daredevil?
Yeah.
Daredevil?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which of those 4 seasons would you say is your favorite?
Oh, God, that's... It's too hard, Nick. It's too hard.
It's not that hard. I have a clear one for me personally.
Season 1 of Daredevil was so good. I haven't finished anything beyond season 1 of Daredevil and Jessica Jones, so I'm kind of out of this conversation. But I really liked that first one.
I love David Tennant so much in Kilgrave. Jessica Jones is like, I think it would be, but then I also love Luke Cage so much. I don't know, Nick. I can't answer that. This interview's over.
I would say my personal favorite is Jessica Jones. Like, I think everything about Jessica Jones was and is the best that we've seen out of Marvel Netflix shows. My only complaint with Jessica Jones is that it goes like, it solves the problem, and then it's like, we got to do 2 more episodes. Like, I kind of felt like the end of that season wasn't very necessary to the story as a whole. But you're right, Luke Cage is phenomenal, and my only problem with Luke Cage is that the actor who played Luke Cage, like, the way they went with his character was very muted compared to the Luke Cage that I know, who's very much like...
Yeah, he's like loud and proud about everything that he does.
Exactly, and that was the Luke Cage that I wanted. I like the one that they did, but it didn't resonate with me in the way that I expected him to, if that makes any sense. And then it also suffered from the same thing that a lot of the Marvel shows do, where, again, it solves its story, and then it continues on for a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's...
So because
Yeah, as much as I love all of the shows, I think probably all of them I could say the same thing, that they all feel like 2 episodes too long. I think all of them, that's the case.
Mm-hmm. But because it had that, just like Jessica Jones, on top of the whole what I wanted from Luke Cage versus what was delivered, that's the only reason that it's below Jessica Jones. Otherwise, it would be equal. Like, in my eyes, they're both phenomenal. So,
I'm not super familiar with any of the comics these are based on, so that wasn't a disconnect for me.
Sure.
And then the second thing, I guess I'm just on a comics thing now, is the other thing is I had started the Batman Telltale game a while ago, but now I started it again and finished it. And I know we've talked about Telltale games in general before, but just as a story, like, man, it's one of the best Batman stories in any media that I've seen. It's really
wow.
good. Yeah. I mean, I'm no expert on the comics themselves, as I've made clear a lot of times, so other people can correct me. But I just think the take on characters like the Penguin, who's usually just a joke to me among Batman villains, like they actually made him feel like a real threat and an actually interesting character. Because the idea behind the Penguin is interesting, that he's like the mirror of Bruce Wayne in a way, like the fallen wealthy family. But I think they were actually able to take that potential and make it something interesting. So I recommend it if you like Batman stories.
And we know our listeners do.
They do. Yeah, there's actually Arkham Asylum features heavily, so yeah. Why don't you play Unspeakable Oath and then play the Arkham Asylum portion?
Why would you listen to a Batman podcast if you didn't like Batman?
How many times have we talked about Batman now? It's been at least twice, so we're starting to fulfill that.
All right, well, Ian, anything else from you?
There's other stuff, but I'll save it for another time.
Your comic bender is keeping you busy?
Yep. Yep.
I suppose for my part, it's been kind of a busy couple weeks, but I've been kind of trying to plow through my backlog in video games because I've got a couple things coming out that I'm pretty excited for. So I mentioned Dishonored last time that I powered through, which is really awesome. And I also finished just yesterday Transistor, which I know I'm super late to the party on that one. It's been out for a while, but that was a good game.
Yes.
Just the style of storytelling that they used in that one is so unique, and it took me way longer than it should have for me to turn the speaker on my controller, because that's kind of everything about that game. Because the whole point is your sword talks to you, essentially, is the simplest way to put it. And, if you're just playing the game on your speakers, it's like any other character in the game talking to you. But when you turn on your controller speaker and your steady companion through the entire game is actually talking to you, like, from your lap, as opposed to from your speakers. It's just so different and cool. And very minimalist storytelling too. So basically the whole premise there is you're like in this, it's some distant future world where you wake up and you have this tech sword, and you have to go beat all of these kind of, they're called the Process. They're I don't know, Nick, how would you, they're like kind of robot enemies, I suppose.
Well, yeah, it's a very cyberpunk, not like cyberpunk, but it's very like almost like
the
a
setting
Matrix
feels
style
cyberpunky.
world.
Maybe the themes aren't.
Right, yeah, but it's all about like you defeat your enemies, and then you get those enemies as like programs that you can install into your sword. And not only is the narrative like amazing in that game, but also the gameplay is so, because it's an action game where each ability you get from your enemies has one of 3 uses. You can take any ability, put it as like primary slot, secondary slot, or passive slot, and it totally changes like how you play the game depending on that.
It's so cool to play around with different builds.
Oh, it's awesome. Like you can do it where you're summoning minions and they're doing a bunch of stuff. You can do it where you do one big attack that has like an arc. You can do it where there's like you send like projectiles out that bounce around from enemies. You can do
My
it where you're
favorite
totally
one
about
was
dodging.
I augmented it's called Get, where you basically it's like the scorpion pull, so you like scorpion pull in 2 or 3 enemies, and then I powered up the first attack that you get, which is just she buries the sword in the ground and it does a little attack in front of her. So I powered that up with as much damage and healing as I could. I would just pull people in and bash them away, and pull them in and bash them away, and I don't know. That game is really cool. It's a nice little indie game. It's by the same people who did Bastion and who recently did Pyre, which is coming up on my to play list. But it's like $20, and it lasted me 5-6 hours, and it was very solid all the way through.
So a lot of the narrative is told from your companion, like you said, and also you play a singer, like the character you play is a singer, and there's a dedicated humming button.
Yep.
So you hold the button down and everything just kind of stops and your character just sits there and hums this melody as long as you hold the button down. And to me,
it's to the background music. It's always set to the background music.
And to me, that was like the cement for this game. Like, oh, this is something else. Like, this is an experience. Oh my god,
they finally figured me out in video game form.
Right?
I'm being spoken to. But anyway, that one was really fun. And then, taking a break from my normal Lord of the Rings and Arkham, I went to a bachelor party weekend in Denver this last weekend with a bunch of my old friends who I used to play Star Wars CCG with, and we played like 6 games. It was amazing.
Wow. So
because
like 18
I
hours.
was going to say, the whole day?
Well, okay, so really what we did is we played 4 games, and then we decided to try to do our old janky-ass 4-player, which was never a supported format. And we kind of did it on the fly, trying to remember what we used to do as kids. And then as soon as we started getting into it, I'm like, oh my god, we were stupid. This scales so poorly in so many ways.
Yes.
But anyway, still a lot of fun. The actual wedding's in April, and we're already planning to get together around the wedding. It's going to be in Brainerd, Nick, so, that's a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Wedding crasher.
Star Wars CCG, still a thing, turns out. And it's amazing.
Yeah, and like still competitive too. Like there's still world championships for it, which is ridiculous. But
yeah,
that's what 14 years later.
Yeah, and it was cool, and I like that it still has support and whatnot. But it bothered me that I show up with my 2 decks that are all using like really officially released cards, kind of like they're snapshots of when the game died. And freaking Bill and Parker, my friends, show up with like the new virtual sets that were continued on by all the supporters, and like they've got like little sheets of paper slid in. I'm like, what do these cards do, guys? We're not even playing the same game anymore.
Well, they recently I think they were up to virtual set 10 or 11, and they recently did a full reset where they said, okay, we're going back to the base game, and then they released virtual set 2.1. or something. So now there's only a couple virtual sets out there. So if you do want to get in on that, it's a lot easier now than a couple of years ago. So
yeah,
I love that game, but I don't know that I'm going to go to those lengths. Even though I probably trust the community to design good cards. It's still, there's just something about it that the gamer in me just goes, it's not official, so I don't know if I can do it.
The guys who designed it are like ex-playtesters for it, and they were also like high-level judges for the competitive scene. And
so they know their stuff.
And Decipher gave them basically all their old stock. They're like, here, take care of this. And they still have stock, which is ridiculous.
That is insane.
Yeah, for prizes and stuff. So the guys who are putting out these virtual sets, like it's not, and they're putting them out like once every 8 months to a year. Like it's one set for a while. It's not like they're pumping stuff out just to keep attention. Like they really are putting a lot of effort into the sets. So.
And it sounds like they're as close to as official as they can be without actually being official.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that's cool.
So yeah, anyway, Star Wars CCG. Still awesome after all these years.
I know that we're over the 2-hour mark, but can I quickly go back to my tentacle time and add a little extension to my tentacle?
You want to extend your tentacle? You want to amend a tentacle? You want an amenticle?
Just a small one.
Okay, you can have your amenticle.
Ian brought up Netflix, and I totally spaced on the fact that I've actually watched 2 seasons on Netflix. I watched Dark, the Netflix original show, which was really good, and then I also watched Mindhunter, which was really good. Both of which are like gritty crime dramas. Dark is a German crime drama that's kind of like about small town mystery and has some very minor science fiction elements. I've been comparing it like an adult version of Stranger Things mixed with Twin Peaks, because it kind of has that bizarre small town vibe going to it. Really good. If you like watching foreign crime dramas, I would definitely suggest you check that one out. And then Mindhunter is based on true events, and it's about the establishment of the term serial killer. And it's all about the FBI actually going away from, like, all we do is respond to crimes and going into the whole, like, criminal behavioral science, and where that, like, originated from. And that was a really good show. And now I'm starting one called The Frozen Dead, which is a French crime drama. So I'm kind of on a certain binge recently.
Yeah, Megan started Mindhunter a little while back before we jumped into True Detective, and I caught a couple episodes. It seems pretty good.
It's really good. It really is. Very well made. And honestly, anytime I see that a show says Netflix original, I feel more inclined to try it out, even if it's outside my normal wheelhouse, because Netflix is doing such a good job with their in-house TV shows.
They're producing so much. There's shit that pops up in my queue that I'm like, I haven't seen a trailer. I haven't heard a mention.
And they're all good. Like, or most of them.
Yeah, well, they are generally very, very good. I'm trying to think of anything Netflix that I've watched that I wasn't a fan of. Not coming to mind. So yeah, we'll go with they're all good.
I've got some, but I'm not going to mention them because I'll just get torn out. I'll get pushed off the podcast.
Oh no! Now, give us one.
Yeah.
What didn't you like?
Daredevil.
Off the podcast.
Like season 1, 3 or 4 episodes in, I'm like, I don't like this at all. Click. So, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, not everything's for everyone.
Yeah.
All right, well, guys, I think that wraps us up for episode 32. So thanks, everyone, for sticking with us. And honestly, this is not our longest episode, so good on us there. We will see you guys next time on Mythos Busters.